There were a lot of movies I wanted to go see this weekend. As in like three. But if I only had to choose one, I would choose the one I wanted to see the most out of any movie I wanted to see this year. So let's talk about The Northman. This movie was epic. No, I don't want to say was epic. It is epic. I saw it the other day. The Northman was my most hyped film of the year. I saw the trailer when I think, and I could be wrong about this, being #1 on trending, and it practically had everything it needed to be a masterpiece. It's a Viking-era revenge film that inspired Hamlet, with an all-star cast including Alexander Skarsgård, Nicole Kidman, Anna Taylor-Joy, who I keep thinking is pronounced Anna Taylor-Joy for some reason, Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe, other people I'm not familiar with, and directed from the man who made my favorite film of all time, Robert Eggers. It is only April, so there are still 8 more months of movies left, but I'll at least say this movie met my expectations, mine at least. This movie doesn't come from A24 like Eggers' other movies, The Witch and The Lighthouse, but from Focus Features, with Universal doing the international distribution. But I definitely think of Focus Features as a major production company after seeing their 20 years anniversary reel, which definitely made me realize how many great films came from them as well. But going into this movie, I had a few thoughts ahead of time. Well, when everyone asks me what my favorite movie of all time is, I say The Lighthouse, but I never got to see it in theaters. And for whatever reason why, I don't remember too well, but I knew I had to see that movie after seeing the trailer. So when it became available on Prime by the end of the year 2019, at least I think it was that movie, Uncut Gems, and Knives Out that convinced me I wanted to be a director more than anything, or at least a professional filmmaker. And I was going to be able to see it in theaters at the Count Basie in 2020. And then COVID happened, so no. Regardless, I did rewatch The Lighthouse many times, and it has remained my favorite film of all time. So of course the next movie by him made me excited, but also cautious. Robert Eggers made 2 slow burn psychological horror thrillers, The Lighthouse and his first film, The Witch, so I didn't know if he'd be able to transition himself to direct an action epic smoothly, or at least as easy. The other thing was the runtime. Slow pacing in movies will always be a problem, even with movies I love, since usually a slow burn movie in theaters can work due to the grand skill and visuals and lack of sense of time, I guess. I don't know. It's different when watching it at home, and I enjoy many slow-paced films, but many are just can take too long still, or aren't interesting enough, so the execution might not work, or it might feel monotonous, and sometimes it only feels effective the first time than the second time, because it feels fresh. Then you're just waiting to see what you already know happens. This was actually my problem with The Witch, which I thought that movie was a bit too slow-paced, but I do enjoy it just not as much as Eggers' second film. Those movies were 90 to 100 minutes long, and this movie is 2 hours and 20 minutes long, give or take credits. I never really know how to say the runtime when, give or take credits. Regardless, I think it's cool. An original film, I mean, it's based on a true story, kind of, but, it was made on such a large budget of $70 to $90 million and coming out during a time when it might not do so hot, but I hope it can shine and stick out. Sure, the movie, now that I did watch it, won't be for everyone, but I should properly explain what the movie is about. The movie was written by Sojin, I forget how you pronounce his name when I look it up, and I apologize, and Robert Eggers, and directed by Robert Eggers. This movie was my most anticipated film of the year, so let's talk about it. As I said, this movie was the inspiration for Hamlet, and while this is an action film compared to Eggers' first 2 films being psychological thrillers, I mean, this has some little bit of psychological thriller elements to it, and I guess I can argue it's a balance between action movies and psychological thriller. I don't know. I'm getting off track. It is still, well, a period film, and it starts off in 895 AD in the Irish coast. King Aurvandill War-Raven, played by Ethan Hawke, has returned from war to his kingdom. His wife, Gudrún, played by Nicole Kidman, and his son, Amleth. Aurvandill is right. The names weren't exactly the main thing I took away from this movie. Anyways, Aurvandill is ready to take Amleth to a spiritual ceremony to get time for him to do I'm gonna call it what I like to call it. A drug-filled Viking Barmistvah. Yeah, not like a party, just like the ceremony part where you become a man that day. Oh, I remember mine. Mine's the drugs. Or were the drugs, I can't remember. It was a while ago. Anyways, Amleth is given the duty to avenge his father in case anything happens to him. Spoiler alert, something happens to him. Amleth's uncle and Aurvandill's brother Fjölnir, played by Claes Bang, killed Amleth's father, forces Amleth's mother to marry him and take over the kingdom, as Amleth barely gets away from getting killed himself. Years later, an adult Amleth, played by Alexander Skarsgård, has grown to be a berserker who feels nothing but anger and vengeance, but reminded of the responsibility given him, he sets off to avenge his father, save his mother, and kill his uncle. He has a plan, he has a way, he must do what fate given to him. He must become what he's been told his fate is sealed to be. But things aren't that easy, but Amleth must do it. It is his fate. There are a few plot elements and characters I didn't mention, but I don't want to go into spoilers yet. Or honestly, I'm going to go into as very little spoilers as possible because I really want you guys to see this movie. I really hope this does well. Still, now that the premise is out of the way, what did I think of the movie? It was awesome! I love so much about it. I don't think it's as good as The Lighthouse. I mean, it probably is in terms of execution, but I don't like it as personally as much. I wouldn't even say it's my favorite film of the year I'd seen. It probably would go to Everything Everywhere All at Once as of now. Which isn't a bad thing. I want to be clear. This is still probably one of my favorite films of the year so far. I mean, it's only April. The movie is great. I just don't want to call it a masterpiece. I don't know. It's always just too early to say this is already a masterpiece, you know? I think I already saw a video of someone saying it is a modern-day masterpiece, so what do I know? Alright, this is my review, and you're going to hear my thoughts on the movie, so thank you for listening. Anyway, so something I hated about the movie, never mind I disliked what was going on, it just isn't phenomenal, which is hard to accomplish for any form of storytelling. The first thing I want to praise, though, is the story, but also critique it. The story feels like a Shakespeare tale, but given much more dimension in terms of story. I'm actually reading Hamlet in school now, and this feels like a much more interesting tale given what the main character's plan is. The characters can feel a bit one or two-dimensional, but it makes sense. Or at least some of the side characters. Like, not to say they're boring, it's just, you know, not complex people or three-dimensional, but Amleth believes his revenge is as simple as he believes it to be, when it isn't. But I was invested, since I don't know why, but honestly, every moment, it felt like this character was angry, filled with revenge. This is my favorite performance from Skarsgård, and I hope he gets an Oscar nomination. The pacing can feel a bit slow. I mean, every time I thought a scene went too slow, the story picks itself back up, but it does feel that way for better and worse. I mean, the worst was the time frame between the promised Amleth and his father's betrayal, where, honestly, that was the case where it felt too sudden. And then they were given the main character's goal immediately, like, he was given a ceremony where he had to avenge his father, and then his father literally dies. Like, that was a bit fast. It shouldn't feel like it would take a 2-hour movie to pull off the revenge, though. But what I like is Amleth has to make sure when is the right time to strike, the best strategy, the right weapon, making sure he has to match it with his destiny, with the themes of fate in the movie. The movie explores a main character who's told his fate and thinks his fate must mean he has to do it because he was told to do it, which does give Amleth much complex dimension to him, as he wonders if he can escape his fate, but knowing his destiny is who he is as a person. It's a really magnificent concept and execution where I love to think about, and it doesn't give me a headache like The Green Knight or Tenet did. He discovers Anya, Taylor-Joy's character, who I won't elaborate on her role in the story too much, but she definitely makes Amleth see things differently, and during a specific scene in the film leads to a powerful moment where Amleth makes a choice he thinks he has to because of his destiny, but was truly his own choice, but he's committed to it, and it's hard to argue in some ways he's wrong for thinking it. The dialogue can be a bit hard to understand, you know, because it's supposed to be faithful to the time period, like how the people would actually talk, but the story isn't hard to follow, and the other actors are also great. They're just a bit two-dimensional, or even one-dimensional, like I said, but I don't want to think of it as, well, like that ruins the film anyway, because still, the execution of the film really makes it feel like this is something unique, since it tries its hardest to be authentic to the time period, with its costumes, dialogue, and mostly its production, where it's hard to explain with written words and not visuals of how great the film looks, but the movie has grand scope with many gorgeous silhouettes. Use of colors like yellow upon black, blue upon green, red upon brown, white upon black. It's nighttime, so it's, well, that would make sense, but it looks great. I love the cinematography, where there are many tracking shots of fights, which I always have a problem with quick cut editing and action. Never make it feel like I get a true understanding of the way in action. And here, you feel like, given to you. You can figure out exactly what's going on, how stronger one character might be. I love a fight sequence involving Amleth where the foe he faces, we see it from its backside until Amleth is given the strength to fight back. A classic way to show dominance using cameras, but fresh and new. It's really great. Like it, and by the way, this movie is brutal. The movie is so brutal. There is blood, decapitations. One scene where bodies are massacred and forced stuck to a wall. I elaborate, but I'm not spoiling the story. I love how everything is executed, both figuratively and literally. Where you truly get this idea of how emotionless Amleth is. Not where he's boring, stiff, or bland, but dead inside. Nothing but pain and wanting his revenge to be simple, but discovers a really shocking to have died. I wasn't sure when I saw this scene where I felt like it was gonna do it. Well, it was setting up what was actually going to happen, where I'm like, nah, that would not fly. But I'm like, oh no, they did go that far. I'm like, wow, this really is taking it this far. It does, and it truly would make this character even more, for lack of a better word, to not spoil the movie or, you know, what's going to happen. It definitely makes it more interesting, I'll say this. Let's just say this moment will make you think of another story you might have to read for school, you might not like in general, given what it's about. I mean, this is really hard to explain without spoilers. I don't want to spoil this movie because I 100% recommend it, and sure, it won't be for everyone. I have a couple little problems with it, I guess, or maybe nitpicks. Like, I actually know when I say this, maybe I don't have problems. This movie isn't really anything that's spectacular or phenomenal, probably, because, yeah, this is a familiar story, but I always say it doesn't matter how familiar the story is, as long as it's executed, it could be fantastic. And I don't dislike anything about the film, so take that. I love this movie. I love its use of violence, action, cinematography, production, performances, writing, directing, everything. It's probably one of my favorite films of the year, and it met my expectations, which is really something that's hard to live up to. I mean, not my own expectations, I mean general movies or anything living up to expectations when you have such a high bar for it, given the context and what it promises to deliver, or what you think it delivers. I really can't wait to see Edgar's next film, and I really hope the Academy acknowledges this film somehow, so, you know, it really can shine through. The Northman is an epic film. I give The Northman a 9 out of 10. Okay. Wow, that was a lot of words I said.